Flight attendant told elderly black woman to move, the pilot stop. Beginning. The rain hammered down on the tarmac of Houston International Airport. It was one of those heavy southern storms where water streaked across the windows in sheets, and lightning flickered in the distance like a restless spirit. Inside Gate 42, passengers shuffled about, anxious to board their flight to London. Some scrolled through their devices, some tapped their feet impatiently, and others clutched their tickets as though the paper itself might offer them comfort. Among the waiting passengers was Evelyn Johnson, a 72-year-old black woman with deep brown skin, silver hair neatly pinned back, and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 storms. She wasn't rich. She wasn't traveling for leisure. Evelyn was flying because her granddaughter, who had been studying astrophysics at Cambridge, had been injured in a lab accident. Evelyn needed to be there. She carried only one small bag, a weathered leather satchel she had owned for decades. Though her dress was simple and her shoes worn, Evelyn's dignity radiated. When boarding was called, Evelyn rose slowly, her knees stiff with age. She made her way down the jet bridge, smiled politely at the flight attendants, and found her assigned seat, 12A, a window seat in the economy section. She settled in, placed her satchel beneath the seat, and folded her hands. Not long after, a tall man in a business suit entered. He had the look of someone used to the world bending for him, sharp jawline, tailored clothing, and a gleaming watch. His ticket said 12A as well. "Excuse me," he said to Evelyn, his tone clipped. "You're in my seat." Evelyn pulled out her ticket with trembling fingers. "No, sir. This is 12A. I double-checked at the gate." The man frowned. "There must be a mistake. This is my seat." "Stewardess." A flight attendant hurried over. She glanced at the man's ticket, then at Evelyn's, and without hesitation turned to Evelyn. "Ma'am, it looks like we've double-booked. Would you mind moving further back to an empty middle seat? It'll only be for this flight." Evelyn's lips tightened. "I've paid for this seat. My legs are bad, and I need to be near the front for when we land." The businessman crossed his arms. "I'm a Platinum Elite member. I always get window seats." Surely she can move. The attendant lowered her voice, but Evelyn heard the edge in it. "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult. If you could just move." Before Evelyn could respond, a voice cut across the cabin. "Hold on." Heads turned. The pilot, Captain Daniel Mercer, had stepped out from the cockpit. He was a man in his mid-40s, tall, steady, his uniform sharp but his eyes gentle. His presence commanded the cabin in a way no raised voice ever could. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked. The flight attendant straightened. "Captain, it's just a seating issue. I was asking this passenger to move so." But Daniel's eyes were already on Evelyn. Something flickered in his expression, recognition, maybe, or respect. "This woman," he said slowly, "is not moving anywhere. She keeps her seat." The businessman started to protest, but Daniel silenced him with a single look. "You can take the seat offered in the back," Daniel said firmly. "Or you can disembark. Your choice." The man sputtered, muttered about writing complaints, but eventually stomped off toward the rear. The flight attendant, visibly unsettled, nodded stiffly and walked away. Evelyn sat quietly, her face unreadable. But in her chest, her heart pounded. For she knew something no one else on that plane knew, not even the captain who had defended her. Evelyn Johnson was not an ordinary grandmother. She was the last living navigator of the celestial gateways. And tonight's flight would never reach London. Middle. The plane taxied through sheets of rain and lifted off into the storm, engines roaring. As the city lights fell away, Evelyn closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. She hadn't wanted to travel through the skies again. Not like this. Not after what had happened decades ago. At 30, Evelyn had been part of a secret NASA program, one that dealt not with rockets, but with wormholes. She had the rare neurological pattern that allowed her to sense gravitational ripples, to hear the hum of cosmic gates. They called people like her navigators. Without them, wormhole travel was impossible. But the program had been shut down after a disastrous mission. Evelyn had walked away, burying her gift under decades of ordinary life. She thought she had escaped. Until now. 30,000 feet in the air, the sound returned. A low, thrumming vibration beneath reality itself. No one else reacted. Passengers sipped sodas, watched movies, or dozed. But Evelyn's pulse quickened. She knew this resonance. It was the same she had heard the day the program collapsed. A gateway was opening. And it was opening dangerously close to their flight path. The hum deepened. The lights flickered. The aircraft shuddered as if gripped by invisible hands. Gasps echoed through the cabin. Captain Mercer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've hit an unexpected disturbance. Please remain seated." But Evelyn knew better. This wasn't turbulence. This was a pull. The plane jolted violently, as though the sky itself had split open. Out the window, Evelyn saw it, a rift in the air, glowing like a wound in the fabric of night. Stars beyond it shimmered wrong, alien, colors she had no words for. The passengers screamed. The plane was being dragged into the rift. Evelyn unbuckled her belt and stood, ignoring the flight attendant's shouts. She pushed toward the cockpit. "Ma'am, you can't go in there," one cried. Evelyn turned, her eyes burning with authority. "If I don't, every soul on this plane will be lost. Let me through." The urgency in her voice silenced them. The cockpit door opened, and Captain Mercer looked out in shock. "You," he breathed. "You know what this is, don't you?" Evelyn nodded grimly. "I was a navigator. I can get us through." Inside the cockpit, alarms blared. The co-pilot's hands shook on the controls. Outside, the rift grew larger, pulling them in. Evelyn placed her hands on the console. She closed her eyes. And she listened. The hum of the gateway thrummed through her bones, a rhythm like a heartbeat but wrong, unstable. She whispered calculations, memories of training flooding back. Left at 27 degrees. Tilt the nose 5. Hold steady until the pulse shifts. Captain Mercer followed her instructions without hesitation. Sweat beaded on his brow as the plane trembled. The rift engulfed them. For one impossible moment, the cabin was filled with light that wasn't light, sound that wasn't sound. Passengers screamed, clutched each other, prayed. Then, silence. The plane emerged into a void of stars. Not Earth's sky. A galaxy twisted, unfamiliar, with colossal shapes drifting like titans in the dark. They were somewhere else. The co-pilot whispered, "My God, what have we done?" Evelyn's eyes were hard. "Not what we've done. What I've led you into." Hours passed. The passengers, terrified, demanded answers. Evelyn and Mercer tried to calm them, explaining only that they had hit a phenomenon and were working to return. But food was limited. Fuel was draining. And communications were useless, no Earth signals reached this place. Then came the transmission. A voice, neither male nor female, flooded the cockpit radio. It spoke in tones like chimes and thunder. Yet somehow, Evelyn understood. "Navigator. You have returned." Her blood ran cold. These weren't human voices. These were the gatekeepers, beings who maintained the wormhole network. She had met them once before, when she was younger. And she had vowed never to again. Captain Mercer looked at her. "They're speaking to you. What do they want?" Evelyn swallowed. "They want me to finish what I started." Ending. The gatekeepers revealed that the gateway Evelyn had sensed was unstable. Left unchecked, it would collapse violently, tearing not only their reality but spilling chaos into Earth's skies. Only a navigator could stabilize it. But to do so, Evelyn would have to remain behind. She could guide the plane back, but she would not return with them. She sat in silence, the weight of choice crushing her. She thought of her granddaughter in Cambridge, her family, the years she had wanted only peace. But she also looked at the faces of the passengers, the businessman who had demanded her seat, the flight attendants, the frightened children clutching stuffed animals. Lives hung in her hands. Finally, she rose. "I'll do it." Captain Mercer's jaw tightened. "No. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Evelyn said gently. "But you can promise me something. When you return, tell them what happened." Tell them an old woman gave her seat so the rest could go home. Her eyes glistened. For the first time in decades, she felt the full power of who she was. They guided the plane back toward the gateway. Evelyn placed her hands on the console one last time, her voice steady as she whispered coordinates. The hum grew stronger, tearing at her soul. Now, she commanded. The plane shot forward. Light exploded. The rift swallowed them whole. Inside, Evelyn felt herself unravel, her being spreading across dimensions, stabilizing the collapsing gate with her very essence. She was both Evelyn Johnson and something more, a part of the stars, a guardian of the pathways. The plane burst back into Earth's skies, over the Atlantic Ocean. Gasps of relief filled the cabin as clouds and sea appeared below. But Evelyn was gone. In the cockpit, Captain Mercer stared at the empty seat where she had been. His throat ached, but he spoke into the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we owe our lives to Evelyn Johnson. Remember her name. The businessman wept quietly. The flight attendants sat in stunned silence. And in the seat pocket of 12A, tucked inside a worn leather satchel, they found Evelyn's journal. Inside, she had written in delicate handwriting. Sometimes the smallest seat in the world carries the greatest weight. If you are asked to move, remember, your place has meaning. The plane landed safely in London. News spread of a strange storm, of instruments malfunctioning, but no official report mentioned Evelyn Johnson. She became a whispered legend among the passengers, an elderly black woman who had held her ground, and in doing so, saved them all. Far beyond Earth, in the endless night, a new star flickered into being. Not a star of fusion or flame, but of will, of sacrifice. And if you listened closely, you could almost hear Evelyn's voice, guiding lost travelers home.